Welcome to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. I'm Chief Investigator Brendan Keefe. I'm joined now by Harry Samler, better known as Better Call Harry. Good to see you, Harry.
Hi, Brendan.
So today we're talking about a small business owner. And let me back up and say that one of the things I love about Better Call Harry is you're always advocating not just for the consumer, but for the small business owners out there. This is someone who had started a business essentially to help people who needed the help most, and then she ended up on hard times by no fault of her own, and once again, it sounds like government is to blame.
Well, yeah, government, you know what? I'm going to say it. In this particular case, government is to blame because they had a contract with her, and we found out with many others, for transportation services. She takes people who are on dialysis, and she takes mentally challenged or disabled adults to a local school, and she drives every day back and forth. And she depends on the income every month so that she can pay for the vans, so that she could pay for her mortgage, so that she could pay for insurance. And if a government agency just stops paying you, you're gonna run out of money. Here's what happened.
And this is how I do mine. So I put my magnet on.
Zenobia Willis worked hard to get her transport service started, but when we met a few weeks ago, her vans were sitting in the driveway. She was behind on payments and uninsured.
I just purchased this 3 months ago from Carvana so that I can get everybody in at one time.
The majority of Zenobia's business comes from the Northeast Georgia Regional Commission. The commission hired her and her son to transport dialysis patients to clinics and disabled adults to an Athens day center. But everything stopped a couple of months ago.
The state, they put everybody on here who I'm supposed to transport.
The Regional Commission, which receives its funding from Georgia's Department of Human Services, hadn't paid her in months.
We waiting on the state, that's all they keep saying.
According to her records, they owe her $61,000.
There is no reason why it should take 3 months to get paid. You cannot run a business, especially transportation business, without no money.
The problem is bigger than we thought. Atlanta News First Investigates confirmed that when DHS switched over to a new payroll system in May, it delayed payments to all 12 regional commissions across the state, 18 in the Northeast region, including Zenobia.
I do not own a gas station. I have bills to pay. I have drivers to pay. I have commercial insurance to pay.
She continued to drive until the cash ran out. After that, she and her son literally sat around watching and waiting for news. Days turned into weeks, so she contacted Atlanta News First Investigates as a last resort.
Hi, Harry. This Zenobia. Still no pay.
Zenobia gave us daily updates as we pushed the Department of Human Services for answers. It took DHS another 2 weeks, and then...
Hey, I just want to say I woke up this morning and checked my account, and I think they paid me my other 2 checks.
Zenobia got a lifeline. 2 huge deposits. One for $30,000 and another for $47,000. And she'll get the balance by the end of the month. Did you ever think you'd get your money?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. I knew maybe at some point, being that they the state, that they had to pay me at some point, just didn't know when.
Zenobia doesn't want to chance it. So she's cutting ties and will look for routes closer to home. The experience amounted to a fork in the road, but she is determined to find her way back.
I am so grateful for Harry. He got me paid, and I feel great because I'm able to catch up on my bills. Although I'm still broke again, but I'm happy the bills are paid thanks to this guy here. Y'all gotta mess with him if y'all got a problem. Get Harry. He's wonderful. Terrific. And I really appreciate him so much.
Harry, it's always great when you have that resolution, you get people their money, but it sounds like she's still owed a little bit from the government, correct?
So, yes, she got $46,000, which got her back up to speed so that she can go out again and start transporting people. She was waiting on one more payment. It was the October payment, and I think that's processing on time. So as far as we know, they're back on track. But it was just kind of interesting. This is one of those stories where it starts off just helping one person, and then you realize, there's got to be other people who are impacted by this. And the Department of Human Services finally said, although they didn't give us an exact number, they're like, yes, we were migrating from one system to the next, and that caused delays. Well, I'm sorry, you can't go 3 or 4 months without pay. I mean, none of us can. I mean, except you, Brendan.
Well, yeah, I mean, when the government decides to switch to a new supplier for its red tape, doesn't necessarily inspire confidence, because as you pointed out, to the government these may be numbers, but to these small business owners, it's people. Not only was her service not available for paratransit for these patients and for these students, but also just her livelihood. I mean, I don't know about you, but the bank generally doesn't, say, okay, why don't you take 7 months off or 6 months off from paying your mortgage,
Right.
or your car payment. And if you're running a business, there's also other expenses, and usually those lag. So right now people are getting their bills from late August or early September because the billing cycle ends in another month, and you have another month to pay them. So
Right.
generally it's 60 days behind incurring the expense. So if you're not getting that income to pay expenses you incurred as a small business owner 2 months ago, you're out of business.
And we fought for her. I kept saying in talking with her, I'm like, you need to make sure you get your routes back, because they took her route because these are dialysis patients. They have to get where they're going, and they're relying on this state program. So they reassigned it to somebody else who could take them. But where does that leave her? She lost all her routes. And I said, are you going to go back? And she ultimately decided, I'm going to move on. I'm going to try and find something closer to home, and maybe work for a hospital or somebody here in town. I can't risk this again because of a payroll delay.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up, because what you're saying is it's had a chilling effect. Like, who wants to do business with the government when the government's unreliable? Now, I'm painting with a broad brush here, but
Right.
That's her experience is, other customers pay on time, but the government, and that's the problem. How do you fight the government? Meanwhile, who gets her routes? The larger companies who can absorb this kind of a loss, at least in the short term.
Right. And, I would love to say there's a big takeaway here, like what should you do when your state government switches over its payroll system and there are delays? Well, I mean, you know what? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and she complained to the news. And that's kind of what we're here for, I mean, we went out. How much did we push this along? I can't exactly say, but 2 weeks later, she had no money, and I called him on a Friday, and I said, guys, she hasn't gotten anything. And then all of a sudden, the next day, a $30,000 deposit, and it's like, okay, somebody's listening.
Since this is behind the investigation, first off, I want to point out that you've gotten laws passed yourself. You've very often gotten people their money back. I mean, I think the other day we tallied up just what you've gotten back for people so far this year, and it's an extraordinary amount of money that you've been able to get back for people. But at the same time, aren't you noticing that because, you and I started doing this before the internet.
Right.
For kids watching at home, there was a time before
What's the internet?
Right? And, we used to carry quarters in our pocket and wear a pager, and when the desk would page us, we'd have to go find a payphone. Welcome to the reminiscing hour. But now with social media and with, other sources of news, do you notice that our calls don't get returned as quickly, and that, hey, we're doing a story doesn't have the same power that it used to?
Usually, there's still a lot of viewership with television. That's why we're all still here. And I really think, for the most part, when I call an organization that's legitimate, that we're going to get a response. Why did it take 2 weeks? I guess it was a bigger problem than we realized. But I think for the most part, when I talk to people and I say, hey, listen, we want to give you the opportunity to respond. We're doing a story about this. I think people still know that there's a lot going on, and a lot of people still do watch local news. They watch TV.
Yeah. Oh, I certainly wasn't saying they don't. I was just saying that in the diluted space, especially now, like, people do have the ability to directly criticize, a vendor, a government agency, it's been democratized. It's with Gutenberg, you needed to know someone who owned a printing press. Now,
Right.
We can publish from our phones, and so that has an impact. Back to this story that you covered. What's the next step you think? Not just for her, but for other people who were affected by this, delay in payment from the government?
Sure. So the Department of Human Services, which is a huge organization that directs a lot of this funding to the Atlanta Regional Commission, which is ARC, and then all of these there's 12, I believe, regional commissions statewide, and they get funding from various sources, but that's one place. I don't think they intended for this to happen, but it did. But I think you bring up a good point that the more you talk about this, or let's say that these drivers had started a Facebook chat group, so that, to get that message out, I think that will help. Did that answer the question?
It did, and I'm telling you, if I was a business owner or a government official, and they said, Harry Samler's on the line waiting for you, I'd be shaking in my boots. And it is just proof that you're so successful at getting people their money back, making them whole. And I mean, you're the master, and there's nobody better than Better Call Harry.
Well, I would say go on, but I'm gonna say this, that we have a big microphone. We have
Literally right in front of us right now.
Literally a big microphone in front of us, and it's almost like we have a bullhorn to say, "Hey, what's going on? You got to make this right." And it's really cool when you can help one person, and then realize you didn't just help one person; you helped a whole group of people, and at the same time, you educate people. That's what we do. It's a great job.
I wish we could show people our workspace right now, because there are 11 of us essentially working in a space where 3 people used to work, and it's a wonderful space. But as a result, we get to hear each other's phone calls. And Harry Samler is exactly the way on the phone as he is in his stories. He's like, "What? Come on, you're ripping these people off. You got to get them their money, and you're just so fearlessly advocating and elevating smaller voices."
I try not to yell at people. I always try and be nice.
And
Let's tell them what we're doing, and see if they respond. And if they don't, we'll call them again.
And you always give them an out, which is nice. And the out is actually doing the right thing,
right,
which they should have done from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Harry Samler, joining us from Better Call Harry for Behind the Investigation. I'm Chief Investigator Brendan Keefe with Atlanta News First Investigates. You can see Behind the Investigation on YouTube, on Atlanta News First Plus, and our streaming platforms, including our app, atlantanewsfirst.com. And also, you can listen to this as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time.